again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alumni Chats, a weekly podcast featuring alumni from the Department of Broadcasting and Journalism here at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon. I'm the host of the podcast. I'm also the interim dean for the College of Fine Arts and Communication. Today, I'm talking with Zack Howell, back from the class of 2008. Good to see you, young man. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Buzz. You haven't aged a day?
Well, I think I have, but it is so good to see you. And you've got the leather jacket on.
That's right. Pulled it out of the back of the closet. I only pull it out for special occasions.
That's right. And so we're going to get into this because you were on the football team while you were here at WIU. In fact, that's part of the reason we got you. We lucked into you. And so We're going to talk all about that. But give everybody a life update. Tell everybody where you're at, what's going on.
Yeah. So currently reside in northern LA County in a small, quiet ranch town called Acton, California. I was originally born and raised around here in the suburbs of LA.
Oh, okay.
And, through a series of fun events, found my way in Macomb, but we'll get into that later. And right now I think I just started my third year at Walt Disney Studios as a lead architect for StudioLAB, kind of a small startup within the Walt Disney organization. And it's been a fun ride, a fun adventure, and definitely been a great, last 3-4 years.
That's awesome. We're going to talk all about what it's like to work for Disney and also what you do and how you got there. But I would like to begin at the beginning, which is, as you said, you grew up in California. Yep. And you must have had athletics as a main part of your life early on.
Yeah, growing up, discovered football, through my dad, pushed me to play. And I was always a chubby kid, a bigger kid, and was thankful that they had a sport like football where, if you're a little bit bigger and not cut out for basketball or baseball, there's a sport there for you there's a spot there for you on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And, played in high school. I guess the grades weren't stellar, didn't get a lot of looks out of high school. So once I graduated high school, started playing football in junior college at LA Valley College here in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles. And played 2 years there. And then when my 2 years were up, got my associate's degree. And because of a player that came before me, I believe his name is James Norris, if I'm not mistaken, who had just a stellar career at Western Illinois. Wasn't your typical wide receiver. He was a little bit shorter, but super athletic. And, I have to thank him because he was the athlete who kind of made the pipeline possible from LA Valley College to Western Illinois. And so there was a few of us from LA Valley who made our way to Western Illinois over those years. And it was great. It was a great ride. I remember I showed up to camp, probably about 50 pounds overweight, super out of shape. Coaches were mad at me. And I learned, very quickly, like Western Illinois was some big time football, super fast. I remember the first day of pads was just like, I was like in shock how fast and how hard the hits were. It's great. It was a lot of fun. But that's how I made my way to Western.
Let's talk a little bit about what you were like in high school. I mean, I'm always interested because I think you were always a gregarious guy, a good-natured person. Were you like that in high school? What did you like to do? You played football a lot. Like to have a good time. What were you like in high school before you came over to WIU?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Probably was a class clown. Honed some good impersonation skills of my coaches and my teachers. Definitely a fun-loving guy. Had a great group of friends, and I'm embarrassed to say academics were not my main priority, but we had a lot of fun. And I think I could even remember back to my high school days. Being in video club and video class. This was like in the first days of High 8 video recorders, and making stupid little movies. This is pre-YouTube, pre any of that stuff, where you had to, if you recorded something, a fun video with your friends, there wasn't really a good way to edit it. So just kind of things like that, just having fun.
Yeah. Being creative and just being a fun loving guy.
Yeah. And then, luckily, that having athletics and having football in my life really kind of gave me a little bit of that discipline, even though the coaches, I'm sure, would have wished I had more, but it was definitely on the football field where, I felt most alive. I felt most value, and just in a team atmosphere like that, and this definitely bleeds into my career now. The things I've learned on the gridiron, especially about how I can, I'm more loyal and allegiant to teams rather than myself, right? I'm better in a team environment than just being, some guy solo doing one job. I excel in team environments when I have things on the line, things at stake, things I need to deliver for the wider team. And so, yeah, I learned that definitely at a young age.
So other kind of things you learn at being on, especially a Division I football team, at FCS or the back then it was Division I AA. I'm sure it was called in that division. You were learning how to, to put it for you had some. Had to learn how to become an athlete at that level, didn't you?
Yeah. It was a rude awakening when I showed up and, got there. And as anyone, if anyone says that, 1AA is, beneath Division 1A, it's definitely not the case. You get there and you learn quickly. It's big time football. And then it's just the players around you, some of them, kind of slip through that those recruiting pipelines to make it to University of Illinois or Michigan or Wisconsin. But there's definitely some big time athletes there. And some of them were great athletes, but, just on paper, they might've been a little shorter, a little lighter than, your typical D1 athletes. But, learned very quickly that Western Illinois and the Leathernecks was big time football and definitely like a big commitment. And, just being a part of that legacy and that heritage of being one of the first colleges with the football team, along there with Notre Dame and some of those older schools was like really special and still really magical to me.
So one of the things that I also appreciate about being on a team like that is that you helped you develop your work ethic that ended up impacting you for years to go on into your future.
Yeah. And Buzz, I'm surprised you reached out to me because academics at Western, wasn't my strong suit. I wasn't presenting packages at the National Association of Broadcasters in Vegas. I wasn't in the same elite categories as the Brittany Baughmans, the Kyle Durkins, the Nicole Weissmans. I think I get her name right.
That's right.
The Kirchhoffs, these folks had a level of professionality in college that I was very admirable of, but I just didn't have at that time. Right. But, looking back at my career now and how far I've come, I tell this to a lot of people I work with, some people will ask me, where I got my work ethic from, or, where did you get this courage from in the work environment? And, I tell them all the best qualities of my personality were forged in that 3 years at Western Illinois and being a Leatherneck. Right. And, still some of the best times of my life were waking up at 4:30 a.m. in the freezing snow. I know you folks just had a snow day there at Western. Yeah. Some of my best memories, waking up at 4:30 a.m., starting my little Infiniti G20, going to pick up some of the teammates, and then going to spring training in the freezing snow. And it was tough. It was hard. But, when you're out of it, you realize how important it was, how formative it was, and you really miss it. The hardest days, wound up to be some of the most enjoyable days. So definitely I chalk up a lot of my work ethic, my grit, my positive can-do attitude, my confidence, my courage. Definitely chalk up to my time at Western Illinois, and not just on the football field. It's also in Salee Hall, right? You folks were great and very giving with your time, energy, and patient with folks like me. Who might have, came stumbling a little bit late, but I just remember, being exhausted from spring training, super cold, I had some metal frame aviators that were just freezing on my face, but like walking to class, just feeling, so tired, but that having that good high after a good workout and going to class and just feeling lucky, feeling blessed to be a part of the Leathernex.
Yeah, we had some great student athletes come through our program. I'm trying to think of Mike Cyphers was a broadcaster, Travis Glassford,
Herb Donaldson.
Herb Donaldson was somebody. I mean, there were. I'm sure I'm going to forget some other great players, but I think that part of the overall experience is and the development of Zack Howell is both what happens in the classroom, but also what happens socially. And I think that having some very positive memories of and can you share like what's your favorite football memory? From your playing days?
So like I mentioned, when I showed up to camp, I was super out of shape. So it actually, took me a year to kind of get into D1A shape, right? Coming from junior college. Coach McCall was very patient with me. Coach Don Patterson, they're all great, super patient. But my junior year, it was a very competitive team, very competitive offensive line. Some of the kids had been there since they were freshmen. And so I was clawing and scraping for a starting position. Didn't get one my junior year, but later in the season, Drew Sweeney, a great friend of mine, got injured. And so, it was next man up. It was my time to start. And we rolled into Northern Iowa. I don't know how bad the spread was, but we were definitely underdogs. And it was my starting game. And I remember my coaches were all, kind of nervous, they thought I was, the weakest one on the offensive line, but we rolled into Northern Iowa. I had a great game and we came out with the victory. And that locker room was so on fire that day after that victory, and that bus ride home was great. And it just felt great rolling into Iowa, beating a powerhouse like Northern Iowa, who were the big shots in our conference. And I remember Don Patterson spoke to me a couple days after that game. He's like, well, Zach, we were kind of nervous about you, but you actually had a great game. And that was, that game set me up for a great senior year. My coaches had confidence in me. They believed in me. I started believing in myself. And, I think that summer after my junior year, I stayed in Macomb. I made it a point not to go back home during summer training. And so it's me and, 3 other giants living in my house on 626 West Orchard. That was my place right there near campus. And got a lot of great memories in that house. And whoever is living in 626 West Orchard, a piece of my soul is still there.
They demolished the house, by the way. I hate to tell you this.
Oh man, darn
it. They may have. I don't know. That's awesome, because I tell you that there was not an easy game in the Missouri Valley. You couldn't take anything for granted, and it really was. It was, and of course, Coach P. I couldn't say more about his influences, and such a fine gentleman, such a good person.
Yeah, a lot of great coaches, and actually, I played football with Myers Hendrickson, who is now the newly named head coach. So Myers, if you're watching, good luck with the season, buddy. And awesome. It's great to see someone who's just my age or a little bit younger, take a head coaching job so early in their career. So I'm sure there's a bright future ahead for him.
So before we move on to the academic part, Zach, do you miss, do you do anything athletically still? Do you miss any of that?
Oh, definitely miss it. Don't really do anything athletically. I think I'm overdue for a nice walk around the block. That's taking my dogs on a walk. That's pretty much the extent of it. But Buzz, after this call, just because you brought that up, I think I'm just going to go get a gym pass and hop back in there.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your memories of Sallee Hall. You mentioned some of the characters that were up there at that period of time. What kind of things how were you involved? What kind of things were you doing?
Yeah. I think, so I get there and, I mentioned some of these all-stars you had there, Brittany Bauman, Denise, can't remember her last name.
Anika. Yeah.
Yeah. Anika. And these folks had that professionality and knew what they wanted to do when they were there. And I always was like, when I was around them, I felt like an imposter. I'm like, I didn't have it then, but I always got along with Tom Dorso and always liked, hanging around the engineering department there. or the engineering room. And, little did I know that my future would kind of lead me into the same kind of path as Tom Durso, as a cynical, jaded post-production engineer. Just kidding, Tom, you're great. But yeah, always had a lot of fun setting up the basketball games, doing the multicam setup, seeing how the camera truck worked. And then especially later in my career, like when I got to work around in those professional broadcasting environments and I felt like familiar, right? That was really special. So I definitely think I was always more of an engineer, someone behind camera. But there was one time when we all got our chance to direct the news broadcast. And I remember Sam Edsall, I believe that was his name, Sam Edsall, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that the correct name? After a news broadcast, he just had a lot of great compliments. He told me, Zach, you're calm, you're collected, you're giving direction, you're calling out the right camera shots, perfect timing. And he mentioned that I had a good future, in directing, and not doing things like that now, but even then I felt that confidence in, calling shots, kind of influencing where other team members are going and doing, and it still, at that time it felt felt very familiar and very good.
Nice. And so when you graduated, let's talk a little bit about your transition. What did you do right after you graduated?
Yeah. So, you graduate with this big broadcasting degree, and you think you're going to move back to LA and take on the world. And I started out as a logistics specialist for Domino's Pizza. So, that's a fancy way for saying I delivered pizzas as my first job out of college, just to scrape up some cash. But yeah, I'm sitting at home that summer, after that May graduation, and looking online for jobs. And this was like the first days of I don't think Indeed was around, but there was like monster.com, these type of job posting sites. And I really was having a hard time finding a job, especially in the suburbs where I was living at. But I wandered into this place called WinTech Video in Van Nuys, California. And I had found them online. So I wandered in with my resume. It's like, hey, you got any jobs? And it was a small team working there. They're all setting up E&G camera packages for rental, right? And the guy was just super candid. He's like, hey, we're a small shop. We don't have any jobs. He's like, but go check out these companies. And he gave me a list of companies. He's like, go check out VER, Video Equipment Rentals. He's like, go check out Bexel Video, who are huge in the television broadcasting game. And he's like, go check out Wexler Video. He's like, go into these places with your resume. These are the big boys in town. They should have a job for you. Right. So I'm like, I'd never even heard of these companies. Right. And so I go to all three companies, I apply, and, sure enough, the company Wexler Video, I went to high school with the operations manager there, and that definitely that Western Illinois broadcast degree looked great. And what it was, and I just had been introduced to this, it was like E&G rental facility. They rented out camera packages to a new type of television called reality TV, which had just started to boom because right when I got out of college, 2008, there was a writer's strike. So writers couldn't make scripted narrative television, right? There was a freeze on that. So what all these production companies did is they just started making reality TV because you didn't need writers, even though it's all kind of
right. Yeah, wow.
Loosely written and produced. So the company Wexler Video was setting up camera packages, SoftBank lighting kits, camera trucks, hidden house builds or camera house builds like Real World had, and it was booming. Camera packages were flying out the doors, getting loaded up on trucks, and it was just really lucky that a writer's strike made this company so so powerful and so successful that I was able to get a job and kind of start out as a driver. But once I got into that warehouse and I saw 500 Sackler V20 tripods, and there's like Sony PDW F700 cameras floating around, a lot of Canon glass, right? We were just we were all shop technicians putting these packages together, going to find the one special lens that's hidden somewhere in the back of the warehouse. But it was great. It was a really formative part of my career. I met some of my lifelong friends at that job. We were all young in our early 20s, mid 20s, and it was just like it was a magical time. And
wow,
all of us who are still friends, like we look really fondly on our time at that company. And for me, it felt very familiar. It just felt like I was in Salee Hall again, setting up a package to go, to go do a stand-up.
The right place, the right time. But again, you were available, and you were, on the availability of trying to make sure that you were trying to make those networks and those connections. I think that's a great story for a young person that is wanting to get into a particular part of the business, and not always expecting that this might be the traditional route, that you can find different ways to contribute if this is what you really want to do in terms of your creativity.
Yeah. And the good thing about it is, like, what that company would do is they would give us these things called memo loans, right? So we were able to check out gear on the weekend and go make a bunch of short films, go make a bunch of skits. We were all so creative. I think all, my friend group at that company, we were all aspiring artists and directors and, just content creators. And we got to go do that. We'd rent out legit expensive, movie making cameras. And, I've made a couple of short films in my day, nothing that I would share with you or anyone else who's watching this podcast. But we were all very creative, and definitely took advantage of our time there with all that equipment. A lot of us were kind of like that quintessential gearhead, geeking out on all the new cameras and glass coming in. It's great.
So what happened next then?
Yeah, so that company Wexler, they had across the street, they had another building, and it was called Nonlinear. I was like, hey, I know that word. I think Sam Edsall taught me how to do. He taught me about nonlinear editing. I think he actually taught me how to edit tape to tape with that Sony
Edit Station. Yeah,
that Sony device. And they were kind of it was the same company, but it was kind of a different team. And I remember I got fed up one time, and I was going to quit. I put in my 2 weeks. I was being a petulant mid-20s millennial, and the ownership at the time was like, we want to keep you. I think you've run your course at this job in the camera house department. How about you go work in post-production across the street? It'll give you kind of a new breath, maybe invigorate you, give you something new. So that was my first introduction to post-production. And of course, we had been doing Final Cut editing in Salee Hall for, at Western, but this was like real deal, setting up edit stations all across LA. And it wasn't the early days of Avid, but it was definitely a time when Avid editorial edit bays were just blowing up. And what we would do, we would load up a bunch of tables and equipment and computer monitors and G5 Mac towers. This was pre-Mac Pro. And we would schlep these edit stations all over town, so if you're in the LA area, we'd leave from Burbank and go to Santa Monica, Manhattan Beach, Hollywood, got to visit all these studio lots to go set up edit bays. And, did that for a couple of years, and then finally realized hey, I'm kind of just being a high price mover, not really growing at all. So I took, that resume that I had developed, working in electronic news gathering camera packages and equipment, but also having experience as an Avid technician and setting up Avid edit bays all over LA. And I was able to kind of parlay that into a new job. This was right around the digital dailies revolution. So cameras like Red had just come out, and then Arri had their Alexa camera that just came out. So film was, this was kind of where film started winding down. All the film and television shows started shooting digital. So there was a business need to manage all of that media straight off the magazine, right? So they call that the digital dailies kind of revolution. I got a job at a company who was a digital daily service. And so that was for me kind of a start of learning other parts of the post-production workflow at different jobs. So from then on, when I was at that Wexler Nonlinear, every 2 years, I would do a job, master it, polish off the resume, and then go get another job that was a little harder, a little more difficult, a little more, anxiety inducing. But it all just added on to my kind of post-production workflow and filmmaking education.
Yeah. So you keep growing as you talk there, this professional growth. So how did you end up getting to where you are now at Disney?
Yeah. So, I think if I had to give like an origin story, around 2010 to 2011, I was talking with my CTO, and we were talking about a camera, and we're just kind of shooting the breeze. And I was like, yeah, that camera has a computer on board. And the CTO looks at me, and he's like, no. It is a computer. He's like, everything around here is just a computer. He's like, your car is a computer with an internal combustion engine. This camera is a computer that has a sensor, right? An image sensor to pick up images. And, he says that, and then I go and let that stew, and like that followed me for a few weeks. And then that over the next, months and few years, I realized that post-production engineering, what I was doing at the time, is just kind of IT, right? It's just information technology work. And then it just hit me like that. Everything, post-production is very like, signal flow, running cables, hooking up to this deck. This deck can get, this Avid will ingest from this deck. At that time, it had a very kind of blue collar, boots on the ground type of feel, but it just hit me that this post-production engineering game is just going to be all IT based, all, kind of almost software engineering development based. And so I made it a point to start to learn traditional IT, right? Traditional stuff that like a systems administrator would do, right? And what that led me to was a company called Lightiron, and this was like the final graduate school job I had. It was a company called Lightiron. They are a subsidiary of Panavision, and they were a DI facility, right? So that stands for digital intermediate, and that's back in the days when you used to shoot on film. Then you'd scan your film you digitize your film, you'd edit with the digital proxies, but then you'd go to a digital intermediate to get colored and sweetened, but then ultimately it would get printed back to film. So I worked at this company, and I was a post-production system administrator, right? And when I saw that job title, that's like the epiphany I had years ago. I was like, whoa, that is the evolution of this role that I'm in, that I kind of predicted, right? You're working in post-production, but really you're kind of just a systems administrator. And at that job, we did everything, right? So we managed all the high performance storage and networking and compute to finish full resolution 4K features, right? And this company, Lightiron, had done the first 4K DI job with the social network, which was around 2011, 2010. And here I am supporting all these high-powered machines, all this high-powered storage and compute, but I'm also like making sure the security cameras work, and I'm also making sure the key fobs work to get into the facility, right? Because you had to make sure your facility was locked down, because a content security company is going to come do an investigation, make sure that your facility is locked down. Otherwise, the studio won't do any business with you. And it was just like this all-around great 2-year education in not only how big film features and TV shows are finished, right? The final color timing and color sweetening with products like DaVinci Resolve and Film Light and things like that. But it was just a general great education in IT. And then from there, I got a job as a chief engineer at a fledgling post-production house, and got that job. And I was very proud that I made chief engineer, and I was patting myself on the back and, high-fiving everybody. But then I show up and I'm like, okay, this company is really quiet. And did 5 months there. It was just too quiet, too boring. And that's why I learned at that company, with that chief engineer role, I realized chasing titles is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Someone can give you a chief engineer title, but if you don't have a team and you don't have a lot of business going through, then it's not worth it. So I did 5 months there, and with a great relationship that I had made during my time at Lightiron, an old coworker, Ryan, reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm at Disney. I'm a contractor at Disney, which is basically a freelance engineer. That's how you get your foot in the door at a big company like Disney. and they call them green badges because you don't have the pixie dust sprinkled on you yet. And he's like, we're hiring, we have a lot of roles on the team. Why don't you come over here and work for us? And so, through a series of interviews that were extremely difficult and really pushed the boundaries of my knowledge, I got that role at Disney as a green badge contractor, got my foot in the door, and the rest is history. Now I'm here. I'm a full-time Disney employee. February 10th is my second full year at Disney as a full-time employee, and it's just been a wild ride, been a difficult ride, but challenging but rewarding, I would say, is the way to put it.
So what does your job entail now? What kind of things are you responsible for, and what kind of things do you oversee?
Yeah, so I got a role as a solutions architect, specifically for a partnership we have with Microsoft to move traditional post-production workflows to the cloud using Microsoft's cloud provider called Azure. And basically, what it sums up is, we have post-production workflows. Anyone can set up a Mac Pro Tower near their knees beside their desk and set up some monitors and do post-production that way. What we're trying to do is, leverage the cloud to scale out the post-production process. And basically any post-production workflow we do on-prem now, we're trying to move it to the cloud, and introduce a heavy amount of automation. So all those tedious tasks that humans used to sit behind a computer and do, sending footage across the continent to this post house and this VFX vendor and this, that, and the other. We're trying to automate that process and basically introduce a lot of what they call DevOps practices into the post-production environment. So I'm at a nexus of that traditional Silicon Valley development and innovation, right? So things that I would say DevOps is the best way to put it, and traditional post-production. And right now they're kind of mending, and it's a very painful and difficult process. Not many post-production engineers were trained for this current model. So we're taking a lot of traditional post-production engineers who are great with signal flow and setting up edit bays and just know the whole post-production workflow, and we're introducing them to kind of like a new level of technology. So it's definitely cutting edge stuff, a lot of fun, but not easy.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of fun for you because it. And I'm sure that there's a transition for all those people that they're growing into as well as you're taking them along.
Yeah. And, really how I kind of not made my name, but how I set myself apart is, I work with a bunch of super intelligent, amazing software developers and engineers around me. And these people are far and away far more intelligent than myself. But because I have that post-production background and I know the whole workflow inside and out, I'm able to bring that knowledge and experience I have, mix it up with my grit and kind of like my fearlessness to do new things and to be around, to be the dumbest person in the room for a little while and, work with super intelligent people and add value to the conversation, right? So I know what an editorial room is going to want if we move it to the cloud, right? And the technology is such where you can have a full editorial cutting room where everyone's working from home, right? And virtually they meet in a singular location in the cloud. I know how to give advice and add my expertise to that conversation to make sure the editors have a good experience, to make sure that the post-production pipeline doesn't stall or suffer because we're trying to do too much innovation at once. So it's really, I feel really lucky that my management and leadership kind of trust me to take on this role, and just feel lucky that I have that experience and that grit that I got as being a Leatherneck to apply to this role.
And I tell you, Zack, not only does it sound like a very challenging job, but it's one that is going to continue to grow for you. I mean, you're going to continue. I see a great future of evolution as you continue to grow as well, because there's going to be things that, who would have predicted, 15 years ago, this is what the workflow would look like.
Yeah. And I think especially with the pandemic, the speed and the velocity at which things are changing. No one could have predicted that, right? So like 2 years ago, we went from shutting down the studio, sending everyone home, but we also had a full slate of Marvel direct-to-consumer shows, things like WandaVision. I'm blanking on the other ones, but we had these shows, Captain America and
The Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier. There you go. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There we go.
Yeah.
Probably gonna get fired because I blanked on those names. We use security titles. We don't call them by their real names.
Sure.
But these shows were stalled, right? But we had deadlines still. So we set up a lot of work from home infrastructure to let editors continue to cut from their homes, both in the public cloud using Azure, but also we developed a private cloud at Disney using some technology with vSphere and their VDI solution. But yeah, it's just cutting edge stuff, and just to see the last 2 years, like to work with such great engineers and architects and managers and executives who are just very bold, willing to take chances, willing to take risks to do cutting edge stuff. It's been a wild ride.
What's the proudest thing you've been associated with or worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the proudest moment I've had in my career is probably, becoming a full-time employee at Disney. Coming from, my pedigree and my path to get to a place like Disney Studios and to be associated with Lucasfilm and Marvel and all these great organizations. It was definitely a high point, right? I feel like I'm at the pinnacle of content creation, and all the terrible jobs I've had and the meager compensation to kind of crescendo into this role feels good. It feels great, and made myself a nice little home here, and definitely don't want to leave. I feel like, to use a football analogy, I feel like I can run out the clock here. So I definitely want to stay for the long term, but it's just working for a brand and a company like Disney with its history and legacy, super it's special, it's magical. It's almost like the pride I feel for being a Leatherneck, right? And having a school that might have been smaller, might have been nestled away in Macomb, not a school that everyone knows, but to show up and then be introduced to the legacy of Western and the history, and take part in that. There's a lot of pride in that, right? And so I definitely feel that for my current role at Disney, but also feel that for Western too.
That's awesome. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the recommendations you have for students, because I think that when you answered that the first time for me, I think it was I just couldn't be prouder. So, what kind of recommendations do you have?
Yeah, I would say enjoy your time, live in the moment, right? Don't live too far off in the future. Don't think you're going to graduate from Western and go off and it's going to be some easy road, some quick road to success. It's going to be difficult. So enjoy your time and stay in the present moment at Western, and take pride in that school, because there's a lot of great men and women who just don't discount it as some other state school in Illinois. Like, no, there is a legacy and almost like a mythology to that school and that campus that only exists because great men and women like you, Buzz, care, right? And you treat it with the seriousness it deserves, and you take pride in that, right? You're gonna leave Western, you're gonna graduate, and you're gonna be doing jobs that you didn't think you'd be doing, and you're gonna have these great moments in Macomb that you're really gonna miss. So enjoy them while it's going on. And I'll tell you, some of the best memories I have, you kind of think back, if I'm doing something doing some busy work, or say I'm super stressed out, some of the best times I had were delivering pizzas for Aurelio's in Macomb, and getting to deliver pizzas on the outskirts of town to all these neighborhoods that no one even knew about. And, putting my window down in that nice kind of late spring humidity, listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, cruising around, like those are like special moments for me. Definitely had some good times at 626 West Orchard, and what was it, 729 North Randolph or South Randolph? Can't remember. But yeah, to sum it up, just take pride in the organization and the legacy that other people have built before you. And when say when you're there, take advantage of all the equipment and the workflows you have available, learn that stuff inside and out. Take advantage of the professors you have, ask questions, stay busy. And then when you get out of school and you join the professional world, you're going to realize that like, oh, I've done this before. I've seen this before. I've seen that equipment. I know this workflow. I have information and knowledge that I can use to help out in your professional world. But to sum it up, I know I'm rambling, but just take pride, because I was telling you this earlier, Buzz, like I definitely take pride in my time at Western, and it's much more than just being a Leatherneck. It was a great school, a bunch of great empathetic leaders and professors around, and it just feels good that my career is at such a point where I don't feel embarrassed to hop on a podcast with you and give you a life update.
Well, and Zach, as you said, you keep growing. You just keep growing, man. And I'm so happy for you, because I know you're a great guy, and you deserve all the good things that are coming to you. And hopefully you'll be back in Macomb, and we can head over to Jackson Street Pub or something. And
there we go. Yeah, my whole goal is to make enough money to where I can get my name on a building somewhere at Western. The Zack Howell Football Clubhouse or something.
That's
like
right. That would be very welcome.
Hopefully my $25 a month donation is enough for now, Buzz. Okay.
Well, and I appreciate your willingness to come on and share your story, Zach, because
absolutely,
it is inspiring, and somebody will see this and hopefully they will also feel like they will feel the confidence that you have. They will feel inspired, and they will know that there's a work ethic that you have displayed that got you to where you are, all those kind of things.
Yeah. I got it from Western, I got it from my time being a Leatherneck, and I don't want to start crying or get teary eyed. Has anyone cried on your podcast yet, Buzz?
Oh, sure.
I might be
no, I've had some, sure.
I'm being facetious, but in all honesty, there was something I picked up during my time at Western, something intangible, almost like a spirit or a life force that just kind of gave me a grit that I still carry to this day. It's super special. It's super magical. So I would say, any students watching this, any of your students, relish in it, take pride in it. Western's a special place, and, enjoy your time.
Well, thanks again for being on the show, Zach. Good to catch up with you.
Anytime,
and thanks to all of our weekly viewers out there. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast or want to recommend someone, just send me an email. We want to hear from our alums. We hope you will continue to watch and listen to the podcast, and appreciate everyone's support. So until next week, stay safe, take care, and God bless.